Hello.
Hi.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here with Frances Goodall. Thank you, Frances, for emerging proud with us and agreeing to share your inspirational story. So Frances is an EFT trainer, wellness coach, author of a new book, and all-round kind of amazing, inspirational person who has overcome chronic illness and is living the dream and helping other people to do the same. So it's lovely to have you here, Frances.
Thank you, Katie. It's lovely to talk to you again.
Would you mind just sharing with people some of your history and kind of what led you to be doing what you're doing and kind of your spiritual awakening journey and how that all started?
Yeah, that's fine. In a way, I'd say it all started when I was 18 and I went to Nepal to teach English for a few months after finishing school. And my friend brought a book on Buddhism and a book on meditation with her to Nepal, and I started reading those books. And even just reading those books felt quite powerful and profound, and it was like a bit of a wake up to something that I kind of knew, but at the same time, had never read before or kind of, had that kind of input before. And then a year later, when I was at university, I was doing quite a lot of meditation, was exploring lots of different things at university. And then I got unwell one day. So one day I was on the bus to find out about doing some voluntary work. I was already had a job. I was already doing loads of societies, really busy, but also was trying to start a regular meditation practice as well. And I was on the bus and I just suddenly started to feel really unwell and my head just started to feel cloudy. I felt a bit like maybe I'd got a flu or something, but it didn't quite feel like flu. And I felt quite scared because I didn't know what was happening. And then I went home for the Christmas holidays and was trying to still work, have a job back at home and, obviously see friends and family and celebrate Christmas and everything. But I was really unwell. And then I tried to go back after the holiday and I was just a mess. I had a headache the whole time. I couldn't think clearly. My body started to get really weak. I was really, really scared about what was happening. I couldn't revise for my exams. I really struggled. And then in the end, I had to go home and just was unwell at home for a couple of years after that. So, yeah.
Intense. And I know, we've spoken about this before, that, nervous system and illness, autoimmune illnesses are really quite common when we go through spiritual awakening experiences. I just wonder if you'd kind of talk a bit about, what you've come to learn and what you've included in your books about that, because I think it's so important for people to know that, awakenings can happen through physical illnesses as well as kind of mental distress.
Yeah, I did read about, as I was later on down the line, when I realized that there was also a sort of spiritual crisis, spiritual emergence aspect to what I was going through. Quite clearly, I wasn't sure about that at first. I read that actually when people go through these processes, it can manifest like a physical illness for a period or while you're working through things. And I also do believe that an illness can also be anyway just like an initiation or a wake up to something that's out of balance, just I don't know, personality issues or some, trauma issues that need to be resolved in order to be well, and that the illness can be like a kind of wake up to start to address those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was only, I wasn't clear that there was a spiritual emergence aspect to what was going on until later on when I read loads about spiritual crisis and spiritual emergency and realized that actually the whole thing in a way could have been seen as being that, and actually it may have happened anyway, but it might not have happened at such a young age had I not already started meditating and things like that, but was also had things in me that were quite unresolved and needed to be kind of worked through in order to be able to really meditate and get the kind of positive benefits of that without having to also work through other things that it brought up for me, I suppose. Yeah.
Do you mind mentioning a bit about that, Frances, kind of what the cause was? Do you feel like it was repressed emotion?
I feel like a part of it was definitely like repressed emotions. I think from a young age I learned to block feelings, to block certain feelings. I mean, my parents are great and I love them, but I think also there was a level of which certain feelings maybe didn't feel okay in my family household. And it was also, I mean, my parents got divorced when I was really young as well, so there was a bit of that instability from a very young age. And but then also later on I was really severely attacked as a teenager, physically attacked, and I think that trauma was quite stuck in my system. I also believe there was ancestral trauma that I was carrying, although I only really started to look at that sort of aspect even in the years after getting better, but I think they were kind of there as kind of things in my system, in my genes, in my nervous system from the start that meant that I was more sensitive to things. I was also very, very highly sensitive as well. I think I came into the world as a very highly sensitive, open being. And, I
was going to ask you about that, because I think, you know, from what I've learned about kind of empaths, the more empathic and sensitive you are, the more likely it is that you're going to get these kinds of illnesses as well. Is that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like most of the people I work with today are very sensitive types. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you see it growing, Frances? Do you feel like kind of more and more people are becoming unwell because there are more sensitives now?
I feel that there is like an awakening happening on the planet, and that you know, in the part of how that manifests is that things get out of balance for a while and within people as they work out things and that kind of thing. And I do think there are more people that are sensitive, that are in tune, that are waking up, and that are having difficulties as they're going through that process. I might not even put it in that frame, you know, at the time, but might later on be able to see it in that way. So I've certainly had many clients that have been quite clear that there's this sort of spiritual emergence aspect to their journey, and others that haven't at all but are kind of open to the possibility of that. So
it's amazing how you can kind of, now you've come to the place where you see it as a blessing, you know, you see it as a wake-up call. And I'm just wondering if you would mind sort of giving people a bit more detail about what you actually went through. And I know I've read a bit about your story, and you talked about Kundalini energy being initiated and having blocks in your system. I just wondered if you'd speak a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe just even going back a bit, actually, when I first got unwell, I mean, you know, it was really, really horrible. And I had a headache continuously for about a year. You know, my limbs stopped working properly. You know, for periods I was housebound, for periods I was just lying on the sofa for days on end. So it was really, really awful at times. But 2 years into the illness, I was actually at a local Buddhist center, which I was going to regularly to meditate and to be with other people that were learning meditation and learning stuff about Buddhism. At the time I actually considered myself a Buddhist. I don't today, but I did for many years. I was meditating on the Buddha Amitabha, which is the Buddha of love and compassion, and we were being guided to kind of bring the sense of that Buddha within us and to sort of see it in other people and to expand our hearts. And I just had this really intense experience of energy rising up my system and my heart opening in this really profound and deep way. And then after that experience, I went from being really quite unwell at times to being totally high, and I actually felt like I'd got loads of energy, and I didn't need to sleep for a few days, and was just kind of like, oh God, am I having a manic episode? You know? And I think I called my dad up, who's a mental health social worker and a therapist himself, and was like, Dad, I think I might be having a manic episode. I feel really excited and happy all the time, and I can't sleep, and I'm waking up at 3 a.m. wide awake and that sort of thing. So, but at the same time, you know, I wasn't too scared because I felt so good. So I thought it can't be that bad.
That's amazing, isn't it? Because it's this is so vital as well, because it's like that's just a really natural part of the process, isn't it? Like the mood swings and everything. And so do you feel like you were kind of lucky that your dad knew about this, and like you didn't get sectioned, or kind of you didn't get drawn into the system, did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't at all, actually. I did nearly, like later on down the line when it was kind of, that was actually a few years later when I suddenly felt really imbalanced and like I'd really maybe lost it. Right. It was many years later when I thought I might go down that route, but and I did. You know, I did actually go to the doctors once with my mum, and I remember just crying, and then, you know, them obviously both thinking that there was something seriously wrong with me. And there was just a moment where it felt like it could have gone down that route, and I was could have been referred to psychiatry. But I think it was exactly that time that I was also in touch with someone else who was kind of printing off stuff off the internet about Kundalini awakening, spiritual emergency, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I've been going through. maybe the last 5 years, and I haven't realised.
Wow. Gosh, I just got shivers when you said that. It's incredible, isn't it? The synchronicity that happens, like if you're kind of led to the information when you need it. Would you mind saying a bit more about, you said that like you got to the point where you were like really desperate and you felt like you were on the verge of kind of, I remember reading you were saying you felt like you were on the verge of an enlightenment, but also kind of going into psychosis.
Yeah, I literally felt like I was balancing on a tightrope, and it was like one way I would go and I would be awake, and the other way I would go and I would end up in an institution and be really unwell, and I wasn't sure which way I would go. So it really felt like I was balancing on a tightrope. And there was also times during that period where I literally felt like I was kind of immersed in a dark state and I couldn't get out of it. And it was like I was aware of a light around me, but I was just in darkness. And I do actually remember one time being with my partner at the time on the cliffs of England, West Coast, the East Coast, and just thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Literally thinking maybe I just need to throw myself off this cliff. It's just too much, sort of thing. It's too much. I don't know if I'm going to escape. But it was so interesting though. I'd be in this really dark place, and it would last a few days, and then it would like shift, and I'd be like, there'd be like this relief that would come again, and then it would just go. It was really up and down.
Was there anything you kind of specifically did to manage during that time, or any information that helped you, or practices?
Actually, it was around that time that I discovered EFT. I started to consider myself to be pretty much better from chronic fatigue, but I was still very unstable emotionally and very up and down. And it was around the time I discovered EFT. And there was one time when I just did a little bit of EFT on myself at a healing fair. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was thinking, I'm about physically well, but I'm feeling like I've lost my mind through this process of healing. And I just released some emotion about the fear of being unwell, the fear of mental illness. And some sadness and fear about that, and then I just felt fine again. So EFT became a resource around that time, I would say. But also things like
would you mind just describing what EFT is for people that maybe haven't heard of it?
Good idea. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and we tap on acupuncture points while tuning into whatever the issue is. So there's a point at the side of the hand that you tap on first, and you're just repeating what the issue is, but also accepting yourself with the issue, whatever it is. And then you just tap around different points on the body as you repeat that issue. And it's a way of helping to resolve things and move through things. And, you can use it to work with anything really, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, whatever's there, beliefs, memories. Yeah. So you can use it for so many different things. So.
Okay. So you use that in your practice with clients now?
And now, I went on to train in that, and then trained to be a trainer in that, and I've been using it now for over 10 years with clients as well. So
amazing, isn't it, how these kind of non-invasive treatments can be so powerful?
Really, really powerful, really helpful. And I find many of my clients find it to be a deeply supportive tool in their recovery journeys as well. So, and I still use it today. I still find it helpful for myself today as well. So
So is there anything else kind of during that dark period that you found really, really helpful? Like you mentioned, you discovered Kundalini resources online, information about spiritual.
So things like learning that actually, I was with someone at the time that was a bit obsessed with meditation, I would say, and like really kind of, it was almost like all my friends were just so super spiritual, but I was like, I just need some down to earth people. It was just a bit too intense.
This is really important. I'm really glad you've mentioned this, Frances, because it's the grounding, isn't it? If we do too much spiritual practice, it can be really dangerous. I remember reading that and thinking, oh yes, I'm so glad you've mentioned this. Yeah. So you said that you stopped meditating?
So for a while I just stopped meditating. I was like, stop meditating, stop running, spend time in nature every day, spend time with people in connection, and even with people that I don't see as being spiritual. There was a period where I felt like I couldn't connect with anyone unless they also had the same sort of beliefs and feelings and experiences that I did. But actually that almost became a bit much as well, and I needed people who were just super grounded and super ordinary and just getting on with normal life stuff, and not having to reflect on the mystery all the time, or having deep and profound spiritual experiences and that kind of thing. So. It's interesting because when I first met you, it was through the Spiritual Crisis Network, and you were speaking at a conference, and it was when I first had my awakening, and I remember coming and hearing you speak and kind of being really inspired by that. And it's like, this is a thing that we really promote, isn't it? It's like, if you're in the process of awakening, the most important thing is to ground it and to kind of bring yourself back down, to stop Yeah.
So much spiritual practice. So what happened after that? How did you kind of shift and integrate back into kind of practicing your spirituality, and what happened next in the journey?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think probably next to the journey, soon after that, I ended up joining a cult for a little while, which was not the most interesting experience ever. That was a very much a kind of high kind of group of people. But
so did you find yourself kind of going into, like, moving away from spirituality and then going straight right back into it? And
I kind of moved away for probably a year, and then I went right back into this really intense group that was all a bit ungrounded. It was almost like a group. It was creating a group spiritual emergency kind of situation, really. Okay. So anyway, but I left that, and then I think I spent a while really where I did just completely stop meditating, and maybe do bits of yoga or little bits of meditation or little bits of qigong outside and that sort of thing. Maybe with my feet on the earth and that sort of thing, and then just really focused on my work, developing my work. Focused on running and kind of developing my fitness, having been unwell for a long time, and just enjoyed going on these like 2-hour long runs in the peaks. And
wow, I mean, how did you go, Frances, from, I know we kind of skipped over a bit about your healing of physical illness. So just wondering what helped with that. Was it nutrition? What was it that really shifted you from being, because you were literally like spending days with no energy, couch bound, and to running for a couple of hours in the Peak District? How did that happen?
Yeah, good point. So I mean, there's a whole different range of different things that helped me get fully better. I mean, I've not even mentioned that I had the diagnosis of ME, or chronic fatigue, but yeah, there was things like basically changing my diet in basic ways, in terms of things like cutting out wheat and dairy for a while, cutting out sugar, eating lots of good vegetables and vegetable juices and smoothies, and eating bits of meat I think was helpful. I was brought up vegetarian, but I think maybe bits of meat were helpful for my body type. But then primarily it was more things like the meditation and the relaxation and things to kind of calm my nervous system down, and then later on it was becoming more aware of some core patterns I had, like of overgiving or over people pleasing, that kind of thing, in a way that was draining of my energy, avoiding conflict at all costs, even to my health. So if I've got some issue, I just kept it inside rather than being able to speak about my feelings ever, and that sort of thing, or deal with them in an effective way. It was like shutting down, and getting ill was a way of me dealing with feelings. And actually even years later it was still a bit of a pattern. Every now and again I'd be like, I feel really tired. Do I just need to rest, or am I not dealing with my feelings? And so often I'd find, actually there's a feeling that's here that I'm not dealing with, and it's showing up as illness for a little while. It's
that's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's and so important. And it's like, one of the things that I really kind of want to bring to awareness is when you kind of, because people see spirituality as it's like an easy get out clause of, like, understanding physical illness or mental distress, and it's like, it's really not. You take responsibility back, and that's a painful journey, and it takes a lot of work, doesn't it? So like sitting and acknowledging, I'm not dealing with this issue, and I've got a feeling here that I'm not expressing. It takes real effort, doesn't it? And so I'm really pleased you mentioned that, because it's about recognizing it, and it is what you're doing and what's manifesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and awareness is always the first step to being able to change that kind of deep-rooted pattern that I had. But and it was fundamentally having some kind of deep shift around that, even though it maybe still happened from time to time afterwards. But there was a deep shift around that then just, that I would say after that was when I was well. There was some, I also had lots of therapy, so I went to see lots of different sort of healers and therapists, and traveled to America to see one, and that sort of crazy stuff. And
so you were having physical treatment and
I was body work. I was also training in the Bowen technique towards the end of my recovery as well, and that I feel was really helpful. And then having sort of EFT sessions with people, going to see psychotherapists, different kind of therapists and healers and shamanic healers, you know, all sorts of different people. And, you know, people help me at different stages in different ways. So,
would you say you were kind of guided to go to whoever felt right at the time? Did you just follow that intuition, or?
Yeah, just kind of what came to me at the time, or what felt the right thing, and that sort of thing. I mean, I was also working quite a lot out on my own as well, but yeah, there were certain people that I saw along the way that were helpful as well. So yeah.
Amazing. So it's a proper integrated approach.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, like a lot of people who are unwell, I think sometimes maybe I was a bit too fragmented, was trying out too many different things, and maybe if I just stuck to one of them more thoroughly, I might not have, you know, had to do that, you know. But yeah, so that's why.
Do you think that's part of the journey, kind of discerning? Because I know I was kind of thinking about what you were saying about kind of swinging from being really spiritual to kind of not dealing with spirituality at all, and then kind of, do you think that's part of like the discerning process of like reintegration and kind of recognizing what we need and what you needed for yourself at the time? It's all part of it.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. It also reminds me of the kind of people I chose as partners as well. They went from being super spiritual but almost slightly, you know, spiritual emergency, kind of sort of borderline with, you know, what could be classed as mental illness, to then like someone who was super like into sports and like running and like climbing, and then that was a bit too much the other way. And now my partner is kind of quite balanced, you know, quite grounded, but also spiritual and kind of on a similar path to I am. So yeah.
That's so interesting, isn't it? How we kind of attract where we're at as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you doing now, Frances? Share with everybody. I'll obviously, when we share this interview, I'll share all of your amazing resources. So you've got a book, you've got one-to-one client service, you do a women's wellness circle. Would you just let people know everything about what you're doing?
Yeah. So also just to mention that I've got a little boy now. So me and my partner, who are engaged but not married, but we've got a 3.5-year-old little boy as well. So that was also a beautiful thing to have a child. And but yeah, in terms of my work, I am I'm an EFT practitioner, wellness coach. I work for someone called Ashok Gupta, who runs something called amygdala retraining, which is a worldwide kind of program of recovery that he's developed from illnesses like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivity, and those kind of things, which I think can be applied to other illnesses as well. I've been working as a coach for him for about 8 years now. So that's part of my work, but I also run small women coaching groups for women with chronic health problems, developed Women's Wellness Circle last year, which is about bringing women together online and in person to create sort of sisterhood and conscious circles of women, but also to explore healing tools from chronic illness.
Wow.
And I also do small online groups as well, and we do bigger online courses as well. And then recently I've written a book called You Can Heal Chronic Illness, The Lotus Process, 8 Steps to Health and Happiness. So I've developed my own model of what it is to recover from chronic illness and the 8 steps, and kind of described it a bit like what a spiritual emergence process might be like as well. And the 8 steps that are often required to heal. So
incredible. You're such a role model for people now. It's like, and I'm hoping that people who are kind of going through the illness now are kind of listening to this and, filled with hope that there is, hope for complete recovery, not just, managing, but, you've proven that it's absolutely possible. Are you able to I know you said your book's due out in January.
Yes, fully in January, yeah.
So if you're able to just kind of give a little bit of an overview of what the 8 steps are, is that a kind of...
No, that's too much. Yeah. So the first step is to accept what is now, and almost to be able to surrender to what is now. And the second step is to believe that you can heal and to commit to the process of healing, but from that foundation of acceptance and surrender, because sometimes when you're just kind of trying to get better, that can almost hold you back as well. So acceptance, surrender, belief and commitment. Developing deep step 3 is about self-care and developing your inner resources. So all the different things we can do to support that, like meditation and different ways we develop our inner resources. Step 4 is developing outer containers of support. So it's about support and community around healing, and how important that step often is as well, which I think is missed in some systems, that step particularly. And that's partly why we created Women's Wellness Circle. It's like, actually, we are social beings, and we benefit from those kind of outer supportive containers as well. And step 5 is dealing with blocks to healing. So dealing with things like personality traits that can be holding you back, or even sometimes there can be parts of us that think that we need to be unwell to be safe and that kind of thing, you know, that it's a way that maybe we avoid certain things and that kind of thing. So dealing with those kind of unconscious blocks to recovery. And then step 6.
Sorry, put you under pressure here.
You have to remember it all.
You're doing amazing.
I'm about to get my notes in a minute. Yeah. And then step 6 is about, well, where am I up to? Have I done step 4? Anyway, so then we're going on to purpose and authenticity. So finding a purpose bigger than yourself to be well is often really important.
Yeah.
That can kind of pull you along the path to wellness. Developing into your most authentic self, you know, that's your well self, when you're being really totally authentic with yourself and with other people, with how you show up in the world. Yes. And then step 7 is about healing your past and healing trauma. I also mentioned things like ancestral healing, that sort of thing, although that might not be needed for recovery, all of that step, but it can help, I think, for a long and lasting health recovery.
I was going to ask you more about that, actually, about the mention of ancestral healing, because it's interesting, it came up in a previous interview. Do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what you discovered? Like it's important, isn't it, in this kind of shift? It's like a lot of women are finding, or not just women, people in general, but I think, you know, women have kind of tended to be leading. It's like feminine rising, leading the
happening at the moment, definitely.
But kind of healing patterns of our ancestors and for our future generations.
I mean, I didn't realize that I was impacted by my ancestors until after I healed chronic illness, but I was still like aware of things in my system that felt quite, you know, even though there was quite a lot of freedom and space, there was also some quite tight places in my body and in my body mind structure that I was like curious about. And then it was only through starting to do some ancestral work that it started to unlock some of those things, or even just by doing some inquiry on myself. I actually kind of discovered it for myself in a way by doing an inquiry, like if I was to know the root cause of this issue, would it be before, during, or after my birth, and would it be ancestral or past life? And initially I've started to get more past life stuff coming in recently, but initially I was getting lots of ancestral stuff, and I was like mother, father line, and just following my intuition and kind of using kinesiology to kind of guide me to where the root of the issue was, and then doing EFT on it and helping to clear it, and then feeling much lighter and release, and feeling emotions release through me from my, where I had ancestors that were killed in the Holocaust, so I had, you know, obvious trauma in my family system. I mean, many people are maybe connected with that time, but or other things, or, you know, anything, lots of different things can have an impact on the family system. So but through my own inner inquiry, my own inner work around it, I then decided to start doing some training in family constellations work. So I've been doing that over the last few years, and I'm also going to, I'm hopefully next year going to be working with, I've done a bit of work with him already, a weekend course, but someone who specialises in using family constellations work to help people overcome chronic illnesses, serious illnesses, and any illnesses. So
amazing.
And really fascinating that often actually someone who is unwell might be representing someone else in the family system that was excluded, or like had some kind of issue that wasn't resolved or hasn't been kind of dealt with in the family system, that they then start to take on that role through illness or even through death. Like he's written a book called Even If It Cost Me My Life, that people can kind of take up the fate of someone else. If it's not seen, it doesn't necessarily take that much to start to resolve it, but once you just start to see the bigger perspective and to see that these things can have a big impact on us. I mean, epigenetics has proven that, you know, we can inherit, you know, trauma from our ancestors, that kind of thing, but also that we can change it. It doesn't mean it's fixed. But I don't necessarily believe it just from a sort of scientific perspective or epigenetic perspective. I think that we're also energetically connected to our family of origin, our family soul, and we can't help but be connected to that. So
incredible. Thank you, Frances.
Widen that field can be helpful.
The constellation stuff is fascinating, isn't it? And how things kind of blockages can be shifted just through energetic work. You know, you don't have to spend hours and hours sitting in psychotherapy, or, you know, it's like, it's just reminded me about open dialogue when you were saying that about, you know, somebody manifesting a block for the family network.
Yes.
I suppose it's the same kind of thing, isn't it, that you're talking about?
Yeah. And with family constellations, it's generally done in groups where different people in the group are chosen to represent different members of a family system, and they will often start to feel things that are unresolved, and things will need to be said to help create a kind of flow in the system again, a flow of love in the system again. It's about getting a flow of love in the family system again, or whatever system you're working with. It doesn't have to be families, but yeah, it's really, really, really fascinating.
Incredible.
And so when you do it one-to-one as well, actually, you can just widen the field out, and yeah, that's what I've done. Yeah.
So when are you going to be doing that work?
Family constellations. I am actually using it already in my one-to-one sessions and in Women's Wellness Circle. Yeah, it's really powerful. Yeah.
Gosh. God, you've gathered a lot of tools along the way.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sorry, I interrupted. Could you? What was?
So I'm just finishing. So the final step in the Lotus process journey to health is learning to sustain your health and wholeness. So it's not only about getting well, but sustaining health, because sometimes people get well from a condition and then they want to go back into their old life and they want to be super busy and they forget maybe their self-care or their meditation and that kind of thing. So it's about finding strategies to support you in sustaining your resilience in life, to put up with the fact that actually life, for anyone, is going to have big challenges that come up, and what's going to help you develop resilience. So things like keeping a good support network, things like keeping up practices like the meditation or the EFT and other tools that I teach in the Lotus process to help you stay resourceful, and things like, for women, I really recommend that women follow their menstrual cycle and that they pause much more at the bleed and that sort of thing, and or for men, just following natural rhythms, not having to be on all the time, allowing yourself to surrender and let go at times, or following the seasons, letting go more in the winter and that kind of thing, when it's more time for kind of hibernation, and things like making time to be in nature and all those kind of things that help you stay resilient and strong. So yeah, that's the kind of 8-step journey, really.
Beautiful. It sounds like an 8-step journey for anyone, not just someone with chronic illness. I'm just thinking actually how much of a similarity and a bridge it would be for people with sort of psychological issues as well, not just the steps.
Absolutely.
Sound like they fit for everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's probably great steps. Most of the steps will be really important as well for healing from a spiritual crisis, spiritual emergency, any kind of whatever's labelled as any kind of mental health label. Yeah.
Gosh, what inspired you to write that, Frances? I know your own journey, obviously, but has it been kind of guided or?
Yeah, well, I'm a yes person. Someone phoned me up, someone got in touch with me and said, "Do you want to be a part of this online summit? Actually, it's called the Transformation Summit, and we're going to help you write a book. We'll help you create a product." And I said yes. So that's kind of like, it's just happened. I mean, they got in touch with me. Maybe it's guided. Maybe it's
synchronistically. Yeah.
But I also really wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book on illness as an initiation, as a spiritual initiation, and I think that is a book that I would still like to write, but this ended up being more of a book, of a how to heal book, step-by-step approach to healing chronic illness. But like you say, it can be relevant to anyone to help them live a happier life or to heal a mental health problem or whatever it is. So
sounds like it's going to be a massive, huge, helpful resource for people. Where can people get hold of that?
So it's on Amazon, actually. The Kindle version's on Amazon, but it's going to be on print in January as well. And there's going to be a launch date of the 11th of January. So if you do want to buy it, please buy it on the 11th of January. That'd be great.
Oh, wonderful. And your website is?
It's francisgoodall.com, www.francisgoodall.com. And there's also www.womenswellnesscircle.com as well, which is the women's group for the francisgoodall.com for everything else. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I'll share those with the blog as well, with your interview. Thank you so much, Frances, for sharing, and look forward to kind of learning more about what you do in the future. It's so exciting.
Thank you, Katie. I really look forward to seeing how this manifests. It's great. See what you're doing as well. Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, really good to see you again. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.